Major funding for this special Frontline series is provided by this station and other public television stations nationwide. Additional funding is provided by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
Tonight, a Frontline special series of portraits of the people of the Soviet Union. This is Rita Tikhonova. She's a model Soviet citizen. She's also a young woman who's falling in love, enjoying life, and fulfilling her greatest ambition, to be a teacher of Soviet children. Tonight, the education of Rita.
From the network of public television stations, a presentation of KCTS Seattle, WNET New York, WPBT Miami, WTVS Detroit, and WGBH Boston. This is a special Frontline series with Judy Woodruff.
Good evening, and welcome to Comrades, a special Frontline series on life in the Soviet Union. At a time when the Soviet Union seems poised on the edge of dramatic changes, perhaps the most far-reaching since the Russian Revolution, we are bringing this series to you again because of its unique look at how citizens of the Soviet Union live and work, because of its rare insight into some of their dreams, attitudes, and values. Comrades was made by a team of producers from the British Broadcasting Corporation. They spent 2 years traveling throughout the Soviet Union. They were allowed access rarely granted a Western film crew. Tonight, the life of a young school teacher. Her name is Rita, and this is the story of her education. At the end, I'll be back to talk with the series producer and with 2 journalists who have reported from Moscow for years to measure the changes going on in Russia today and the impact of these changes on the people in this film. The film is narrated by Richard Denton.
Moscow, capital of the world's largest country. The Union of Soviet Socialist Republics covers 1/6 of the planet, and from here, in the Kremlin, the Soviet leaders govern the lives of 270 million people. Less than a mile downstream lived the kind of family of which the party could be proud. The Tikhonovs, father, mother, and daughter Rita. Maria Tikhonova is a member of the Communist Party. That's unusual. Only 9% of the population are card-carrying communists. Alexander Tikhonov is more typical, broadly sympathetic, but not a member of the party. They live in a desirable district, but it's a standard 2-room apartment. Father and mother sleep on a convertible sofa bed, while Rita has the privacy of her own room. It's Saturday night. Her boyfriend's come round, and she's getting ready to go out.
I can't say I haven't had other boyfriends. I've lots of friends. I've gone out with some boys. No, he's not the first. But as far as being meaningful, he is the first. And last.
Andrei is 24 and a set designer at Moscow's Children's Theatre.
For me, everything is divided up into what came before him and what came after I met him. I just can't remember what it was like before him. It was such a small part of my life, like one day. Now, since I met him, seems like 100 years.
Moscow is not a city of fast food, bars, or nightclubs. Usually people just visit friends in the evening. But tonight, Andrei and Rita are going out to Interclub. It's an international friendship society where entrance is by invitation only.
Дискотеки? Нет, не дискотеки. Это вечер. Хорошо, фамилия. Типикин и
Please check our names are Tipikin and Tikhonova.
I only see Tikhonova.
No, it's okay. He's with me. We're going to the meeting.
Upstairs.
Rita and Andrei only met 4 months ago, but already they're planning to get married.
How it happened? Well, you see, my girlfriends told me how it was so formal with them. The man was supposed to arrive with a bouquet of flowers, all dressed up, you know, in a dark suit, white shirt and tie. He should be all excited and nervous and blushing or turning pale, his face covered with cold sweat, his hands shaking. And then he should say something like, I love you and I wish to propose that you become my wife. Well, nothing like that happened to us. We'd gone to the theater. We were just passing through the lobby. And I said, hey, this is incredible. You've never proposed to me. Here we are, always talking about our home, our life together. We're all discussing it like, you know, everything was decided and settled long ago. So I said, what's the problem? You want me to do it formally? Okay, quite officially. I offer you my hand and my heart. I don't know, it just somehow happened by itself.
Interclub is run by the Komsomol, the Young Communist League. Tonight, it's playing host to a group of students from England who are over here on a management course from a British polytechnic.
Well, the prototype of the institute was initially created in 1918. The Soviet power was just doing its first steps. In this country, we were badly in need of potential cadres, potential personnel for management of our economy.
Постепенно, по мере того, как закончилась гражданская война, и наша страна приступила к мирному строительству, база института расширялась.
It's not the most riveting stuff for a night out with your boyfriend. Meetings like this are attended pretty much in the line of duty. But if you play by the rules in the Soviet Union, and Rita does, there are rewards to be had.
In 1935-36, there were about 2,000 students already taking their course there. Well, and before we start talking, we actually have some surprise for you up sleeve. Rita will sing for us. The name of the girl is Rita.
Буйство глаз и половодье чувств. О, моя утраченная свежесть, буйство глаз и половодье чувств.
For Rita, the reward for entertaining the foreign guests is some entertainment for herself. Discos are not common in Moscow, nor open to everyone. But interclub evenings often end with an opportunity for the well-behaved to indulge their taste for what is officially described as mischievous music.
And now, let's walk through the streets of Moscow with Alpha and their song based on the poem by Yesenin, I'm a Naughty Moscow Playboy!
Глупой страсти в сердце жить не в силе. В нем
Rita is a trainee teacher. She's almost finished her training and now feels that she's found her true vocation.
When I started practice teaching, I had a class of 4th graders. They were so small, so young, such big eyes. I looked at them, so little, knowing next to nothing about life, so many things yet to be discovered. And you know, to teach them, to explain why things are this way and not that way, I just remember what a good feeling it was when they started to understand something, that you gave them that knowledge. You and nobody else taught them to appreciate beauty, to understand it. Our educational system is really lacking, really crippling. You know the approach. Just feed the students information, whether they want it or not. You have to capture the students' interest. But sometimes teachers simply don't have enough time to think of it. Where there's no independence, where the teacher stuffs knowledge down the children's throats like baby birds, well, who could be interested?
Rita studies at the prestigious Lenin Pedagogical Institute. Originally, it was a finishing school for the daughters of the Tsarist aristocracy. The revolution turned it into an academy which sent teachers from Moscow to all the 15 republics of the Soviet Union. But the recent shortage of Russian literature and language teachers in the capital means that Rita will almost certainly work in Moscow when she graduates.
The text is divided not only by syntax, but also by verse pattern.
All education in the Soviet Union is free in the sense that students pay no tuition fees. It's compulsory between the ages of 7 and 17, and after that you have to qualify for further education, and it's largely vocational. There are institutes for teachers, doctors, scientists, engineers, artists, film directors, writers, actors, musicians, journalists, and without qualifications from the appropriate institute, it's almost impossible to get these jobs. With them, it's guaranteed.
Speaking of visual arts, which means...
I know what that is.
First of all, painting.
He's clever as hell.
Nearly all teachers in the Soviet Union are women, and teaching is still a low-salary, low-status profession. The revolution proclaimed sexual equality, but in fact male and female roles are still clearly defined even among the young.
The man always was the breadwinner, while the woman took care of the children. Of course, these days the situation is changing a bit, but no matter what, something specifically feminine, patience, tact, tenderness, caring, a purely feminine concern for everyone. All that, of course, predetermined the fact that most teachers are women, but I don't think that's necessarily a positive thing. Of course, the woman is the one who ought to look after the home, but not just physically by doing absolutely all the work, but more by creating a warm atmosphere in the home. Because the mood of a home depends on the mood of the woman in that home. If she's tough, short-tempered, that mood will affect her husband and children. It's natural. On the other hand, the woman has the power to change the husband's mood if he comes home from work all upset about something. Because I think every woman is a born actress. She's an actress who can play any role.
Before completing her studies, Rita must take her examinations. One subject compulsory for all is scientific communism. The best students seem to have learnt all the words by heart, whatever they make of the meaning.
Scientific communism it embraces a lot of certain concepts of philosophy, political economy, sort of political definitions. And therefore, generally speaking, it's a basis for methodology in all science, which defines our approach, the basic approach. It defines our world outlook and the fact that there are certain laws of progress, laws of the inevitability of revolution, the fact that the people are the moving force of history. And if I don't know these laws of progress, I won't understand things scientifically. Let's say, for instance, there are certain theories, like Western scholars of Soviet literature. They claim there's no such method as socialist realism at all, that it's a myth. There's no such thing. And that's the viewpoint they bring to the study of our modern literature, Soviet literature. But we have our scientific methodological approach to this research that is based on scientific communism and philosophy.
И составляет научный коммунизм философии.
Almost all exams in the Soviet Union are oral, but that doesn't stop occasional efforts to beat the system. On her way in, Rita is offered a crib sheet, a common practice.
I'm really scared. What if I fail?
Me too. Do you have any crib sheets with you?
No, nothing.
Take these then. Don't you want to?
Listen, the funny thing is, I know practically everything.
Me too. But you know, just in case. You don't want them? You see, somebody wrote on one subject and somebody else another. And I've ended up with all these tiny scraps of paper.
Черник 35.
Tikhonova, number 14.
In the 19th century, Tolstoy described how Russian students were given a number of questions in the examination room and after a period of preparation were expected to make a speech in reply. A board of examiners would then immediately mark the result from 1 at the bottom to 5 at the top. Here, 100 years and a couple of revolutions later, nothing has changed.
Okay, my first question is about Gorky's novel Mother. Gorky's novel Mother reflects events that took place before the Russian Revolution of 1905 to 1907. That was the time when all the social contradictions of reality made themselves felt most clearly. And also, that was the time when it became necessary to embody the theory of revolution by practice. Perhaps this very clarity, these obvious signs of growing class conflict, this tension in the socio-political climate in our country, caused the ideological and artistic growth of the writer himself. What is characteristic?
Rita is a model student, and was awarded a 5 in this as in most of her other exams.
The funniest thing is they asked me to explain the difference between artistic method and artistic trend, and I didn't have the slightest idea.
Who did that?
Vnukov.
Oh, that Vnukov.
Well, of course I know what a method is.
You should have asked him, Professor, how come you're always skipping classes?
It may have been no surprise that she's done well, but Russians love a celebration, and the end of her examinations is as good a reason as any.
Are you wearing the white shoes?
No.
Okay, those are nice too.
That's it. I'll stay like this.
Are you ready? What about makeup?
I'll do it right away.
Maybe I'll try some parsley on it.
Maybe some of this?
We really need more plates. You just keep filling them while we're eating.
Rita is giving a party for a few close friends, which means that mother and father help to get it ready and then leave to spend the evening elsewhere as soon as the guests arrive. Small Moscow apartments produce special rules.
Everything in our family is based on mutual respect. I love my parents very much. As for my dad, well, he just seems to like everything I do. Dad loves me very much. And, well, Mom loves me too. I think I'm really lucky to have parents like them, and so we really don't have problems. The serious ones.
Congratulations. Congratulations to the new teachers. I wish you all the best. Smooth sailing in your career.
Do you even recognize them, at least?
Sure, why not?
I haven't been here for ages.
Oh, let me look at that shawl.
Just imagine she made it herself.
Oh, that's beautiful.
I wish I could wear that. Okay, rent it.
The housing shortage means that many young people have to continue living with their parents even after marriage.
Early marriages are very common these days. At the age of 18, say, or 20, around that age. But this same age group, on the other hand, has the highest divorce rate. Probably because these people, I don't know, probably because they don't take it seriously enough. Just wanting to get married, that's probably why.
Incredible, just pushed us parents away.
However tactful parents are, it's particularly difficult for young unmarried lovers.
If a couple is in their 30s, well, they're regarded as being mature enough. So it's all right, sort of, for them to live together. But for instance, I can't do like that, just move into his place. Because, like, I can really understand how his mother would feel and what she'd think of me. And it doesn't seem like it would be very good. And frankly, I'm not all that indifferent. I do care what she thinks. Not only that, but I know my mother wouldn't be pleased either if my boyfriend moved in with me. My relatives wouldn't be overjoyed either. I know, for instance, that among the older generation, my grandma, for example, she just believes that it shouldn't be like that, sex before marriage. I don't agree. I don't think like that. I even suspect that my mom also thinks differently. though she doesn't admit it.
Modern contraception is not readily available in Russia. On the other hand, abortion is, and it's become extremely common.
As a matter of fact, I never discussed these things with my girlfriends. It just happens that, I don't know why, it just that kind of relationship in the college, that we try not to, well, we do know about one another's private affairs. I know sort of all about them, and they know all about me, but we somehow don't really let our hair down like that, you know. I don't know really why. It's probably just in my circle of friends, this kind of friendship.
Back at the Institute, in what was once the chapel for the Tsarist ladies, there's one last ritual in Rita's training. Job allocation. Most of these students already know they'll be working in a school near where they live. Indeed, Rita has already met the principal of her local school to discuss her job. But there's a form to these things, and the allocation proceeds with all due ceremony.
Good morning.
The Faculty of Russian Language and Literature presents to the members of the State Commission top honors student Margarita Tikhonova. She took part in academic studies in pedagogy, was a leader in political discussions, has received a note of recognition from the Central Committee of the Young Communist League for her summer labor vocational activity at the Panfilov Young Pioneer Camp. Her preliminary allocation is to school number 397 of Moscow.
Have you visited the school?
Yes.
How were you received?
I think pretty well. The principal is a very nice lady.
Have you met any of the teachers?
Not yet.
Have they made up your work schedule?
Yes, 18 hours a week.
18 hours. What do you think of that?
I think it's fine for the first year.
And you've already discussed participation in school collective activities with the principal, right?
Yes, we talked about the school theater.
About the theater? That's of interest to you?
Yes.
Good.
Well, we wish you success. We hope you'll develop good relations with your pupils right away and really become close and dear to them.
Thank you.
Rita is obliged, like all graduates in all disciplines, to sign a contract that compels her to work for 2 years in the place she's allotted. After that, she can, if she likes, start looking for work elsewhere. School number 397 is on Moscow's outer ring road, a short bus ride from Rita's home. A few days before the start of the school year, Rita arrives for a formal introduction to her new colleagues. As she enters the building, a reminder on the wall from the ubiquitous Lenin. All young people who want to go over to communism must first study communism. Purists of the system here say they're socialists. Communists are what they're trying to become.
Today's Teacher Council agenda is especially important and serious for us, as it opens the door on the new school year. We will be starting preparations for the 40th anniversary of our victory over fascist Germany. Once again, we'll encounter our children, more mature, smarter, all suntanned. And they'll be welcomed by the entire present teachers collective and by 4 new teachers. Let me, according to tradition, proudly introduce to our collective a new teacher of Russian language and literature, Tikhonova Margarita Alexandrovna. Many of us are graduates of the Lenin Pedagogical Institute, and now another alumna of our beloved school, a high honors graduate, a musician, and an interesting young person to whom I shall be entrusting my own chair.
Thank you.
The chair of Russian language will be joining us. I believe we shall work together in friendship. Let us wish her the brightest pupils, the most understanding parents, and loads of health and happiness, so everything will go smoothly from the start of her creative career. May this school bell ring long and joyously. Next, the new teacher of physical education, Shestikov Yuri Sergeyevich.
September the 1st, the beginning of the school year. For Rita, the day begins at 6 o'clock in the morning.
Rita, it's time to get up. Rita.
I don't want to sleep.
Shouldn't you look over your notes before you go? You probably got to bed late last night, didn't you?
Yes, but I fell asleep right away.
Figures. The weather seems to be fair. What's the matter?
The shower. It's cold. It's new to me. It all feels very new. What if I forget to say something or mix up something important? You know, maybe when you're speaking to your class, it's a must to be aware of every person in the room. What if I get nervous and lose it, and the kids don't understand me, and I don't understand them, and there's no contact? I'm very superstitious. I believe in all the omens, all the lucky numbers. I collect the bus tickets with the lucky numbers and eat them. Leaving home, you have to step off with your left foot if you've got a big day ahead.
The first day of the school year is a special one. It's called a praznik, or holiday. It's a major event in the Soviet calendar, and all the children arrive bearing flowers for their teachers. They're wearing the symbolic red scarf of the Pioneers, a junior version of the Young Communist League and the first step on the ladder to Soviet responsibility.
The Pioneers, the All-Union Pioneer Organization. I was in the council of my unit, and, to me it's always remained something sacred, and it still is. You see, it's really very nice, interesting, and it's very important to take part, to be part of, I don't know, to be part of the ruling of something, running a region, running a school. That was our duty. The school was held up by us. You see what I mean? We believed in what we were doing so sincerely it came straight from our souls.
The earth has already changed her garments and dressed herself in festive garb. For all the country, all the children have their school day festival. Welcome, ye lessons. Welcome, ye school. The voyage to knowledge, let it start now. Today is a festival. For all the children, the new school year has begun. Attention, pupils. Dress to the front.
The first lesson they will learn is to love their country. The crowning moment of the opening ceremony is the playing of the Soviet national anthem.
Attention! Standards ahead!
The state lays down the syllabus throughout the country. Today, every schoolroom in the land, whatever the age of the pupils, will open the term with the same subject: peace. No child is allowed to forget the 20 million who died the last time their country was invaded.
Today, I want to introduce our guest, Igor Vyacheslavovich Vryshinsky. Let's greet him. Please sit down. He is a scientist, a highly honored person, a veteran of the Great Patriotic War and a hero of labor. I believe he will tell us many interesting things in his speech when our lesson is underway. It's not for nothing that our writers always take war for one of their subjects. The songs are written, and here is one of them. It is called, "Does the First Snow Lie White in the Field?" All of you know it, I'm sure, and I think you can all help us sing. All together.
Пороша, пороша, белеет ли в поле пороша, и гулкие ливни стучат, стоит над горою Алеша, 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 стоит над горою Алеша, в Болгарии русский солдат.
Like the Jesuits, in the Soviet Union they believe in capturing minds when they're young. For many, it works. And even those who later renounce the faith can often recall that while at school, they felt profoundly sorry for anyone not lucky enough to be born in the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics.
That was the education of Rita. We'll talk about schools, teaching, and women in Soviet society now with three people who know the Soviet Union well. David Shipler was New York Times correspondent in Moscow from 1975 to 1979. He's the author of the book, Russia, Broken Idols, Solemn Dreams. Paul Quinn Judge is Moscow correspondent for the Christian Science Monitor. And Richard Denton is the series producer for Comrades. Richard, why a school teacher in Moscow? Why the city? Why the profession?
I suppose, well, we had to start somewhere. It seemed Moscow was the right place to start. And Rita, there's lots of reasons for choosing Rita. A, she's a teacher, and education's important. B, she's a woman, and she's young. C, it's in Moscow. As with all of the comrades in the series, there are lots and lots of reasons for choosing her. Funnily enough, looking at it again, also, I think now, it shows something of the degree of the task set for Gorbachev now, in the sense that there is a system that is ossified to produce Ritas, and it works extremely well. And Ritas are, in a sense, much as I like her, not really what he needs now. And so it's quite intriguing.
I want to ask you about that, but just to refresh us, how did you find her when you went over there?
Well, once we'd sort of decided that education, teaching, trainee teaching, and all these things would lead us into one individual, we went to a teacher training college and sat in classes for a while, and Rita emerged, I mean, as one of the characters within that institution. And given the fact that we were also looking for somebody like Rita, she wasn't going to be a problem to choose. I mean, they were obviously going to be quite happy for us to choose somebody.
Were you looking for somebody who was such sort of a perfect role model, a perfect model of a Soviet citizen, as she seems to be?
We were looking, yes, but at the same time we were looking for somebody who would be, at the same time, attractive as a personality. So that, you weren't just picking an Aunt Sally, some awful, ghastly kind of thumping great lady who was going to be kind of a role, typical Soviet thumping thing. We were trying to find somebody who would be that, but at the same time pose other problems.
Give us an update on Rita. What is she doing now, 3 years approximately after this was filmed?
Well, she's finally married Andrei. And despite the fact, which is quite interesting, despite the fact that she signed a contract to work for 2 years, she got out of that within about 6 months. Like most people in the Soviet Union, they get out of all of these rules and regulations. They find ways around. So Andrei is working in a children's theater as a designer, and she is working in the same theater with Andrei, teaching the children when they're not acting on the stage. So they're working together, and they're married, and they're living in that flat. Her parents have moved out, and they found another place a bit further away. So they're living in that particular flat that we've just seen.
Paul, how much of what Gorbachev is trying to do now can affect the education system. Is he really trying to get at education among the many goals of the changes that he's trying to wreak in the Soviet Union?
Well, like everything else, he's at the stage of discussing what they're going to do. But they've been saying recently that they have to have fundamental changes in education for the simple reason that if they really are going to have some form of technological revolution, which again is what they're talking about, by the end of this century, they need a totally new way of training people. And as Richard said, Rita is very interesting in that she's very bright, she's assimilated everything exceedingly well. One has doubts that she really understands a lot of what she says, especially ideology. She's probably rather confused now because ideology is changing and she's looking for the new lines to learn. And this sort of person is going to be part of the problem rather than part of the solution for Gorbachev.
Why do you say that? Because she remembers so well what came before?
Well, it's tempting to say that in the educational system up to now, reformers would say, at least under Brezhnev, it may have been earlier though, produced a sort of institutionalized mediocrity, where you did learn your lessons exceedingly well, but you didn't really bother to analyze what they meant. Gorbachev is now trying to make people think, and this is proving a rather difficult process.
Okay. David, do you see it the same way? I mean, you've been back to you were there in 79, up till 79, you've been back many, many times since then.
A few times. I think that probably education will be one of the areas in which it's going to be most difficult to make changes, simply because the educational system, what happens in a classroom, is very often the expression of very deep cultural instincts and impulses. I remember, for example, being told by a mother about her little girl who came home from school one day having a homework assignment. They'd read a story in school called Vanya the War Hero, about a boy during the Second World War who had done something very brave against the Germans. And the homework assignment was write an essay about why you like Vanya. There was not a question, do you like him? It was why you like him. Well, the trouble with little Shura was that she didn't really like this boy in the story. He came through as a rather mean kid. And so she was rather torn, and her mother was a party member, a history professor, as a matter of fact, knew exactly what was expected of her daughter, but decided, all right, write what you really think. So the little girl wrote her essay about why she did not like Vanya, took it into school, and everyone was a bit nervous about what would happen. Interestingly enough, the teacher used the essay as an example for the class. The teacher read the essay, gave it a high grade, and asked how many in the class agreed with Shura that Vanya was really not a very nice kid. And half the kids in the class raised their hands. But Shura was the only one who had written that, which meant that at least half of those kids had written lies because they knew they were expected to do so.
That's what they were supposed to do, yeah. It's quite interesting, and I think it's very much part of the Western culture. I can remember in school being taught, if somebody tells you to do something and doesn't give you a reason, don't do it. I mean, you ask why is the first question you ask when being asked to do something.
But in Soviet society, it's
absolutely not. And that has been, generations have been brought up never to ask why. And it's going to be very difficult for Gorbachev to get people to ask why and to take that kind of responsibility.
Will he be able to get them to do that?
On one level, he already has. I mean, there's a lot of discussion going on right now in society, not especially, but among people like teachers. The reassessment of history, the admission that senior leaders whose names have been anathema for the last 30 or 40 years were in fact extremely good communists and better ideologists than some of the people who took power afterwards, has forced a lot of people to question their beliefs. It's also forced a lot of people, I think, who are thinking to have to look at the way they think. People who are teaching to look at the ways they teach as well. The problem is, you can get people to look at things in a different way, but if you're a teacher, you don't have the textbooks. And the textbooks may take 5 or 10 years to produce, which would give a different syllabus, one which Gorbachev would prefer, perhaps.
So what does that mean? That we're talking about a very long, drawn-out process at best. Is that what you're saying?
You're talking about a process of improvisation for a long time, which may, if things go well, turn into a new way of approaching education, but there are a lot of pitfalls along the way.
I've also heard, and Paul is probably more up to date than I am, that history teachers, for example, social studies teachers, are a little up in the air about how to teach Soviet history now, because the parameters of discussion have been pushed back so rapidly.
Well, how do they know?
And the textbooks aren't there, so...
How do they know? What do they
Recently, a Soviet teacher whom I know asked a fairly senior party official in Moscow what do we do about teaching history. And the official ran through 4 or 5 popular magazines which are writing very provocatively about history and said, you may as well start with these because we don't have any books.
But I still think it's a bigger problem. I think, if you look at the centre, if you look now at new Ritas, you will find these kind of discussions going on. But the further away from the kind of centre operations you get...
What do you mean by centre operations?
I mean the intelligentsia and the main training centres and the teachers and so on. I think you've got kind of institutionalised apathy. I mean, these people have never had any kind of responsibility for their lives and don't want it, actually, and feel that a lot of them don't want it.
Why don't they?
Because life is easy.
Because life is terribly easy without it.
Also, I think in that culture, there's a very deep affinity for clear direction from the top. In fact, I've heard young people say that when they would talk about the United States, and I would try to explain American pluralism to them, a feeling that that's crazy. Everybody has his own ideas. Don't you know what you're supposed to think and say? It's a very, and I think that you find in certain areas of the population, the intelligentsia, some intelligentsia, a desire to have a debate and a diversity of view, but that's not a very common view.
I'm not sure the affinity is as deeply rooted as we think. And I think this is the sort of thing that worries opponents of Gorbachev right now, that what we take to be an affinity for accepting direction from the top is based very much on the assumption that if you step out of line, you will be hit exceedingly hard. It's not so long ago that people were sent to camps for life. This has remained very much constant in people's minds. But the sort of thing that conservative members of the Communist Party seem to be worried about is if this rigid control is lifted, all sorts of chaos will be let loose. And I think there is a lot more willingness to question than we realize.
Just a word about women in Soviet society. How typical is Rita? She's a member of the Komsomol, the youth, communist youth organization. Is she in a special situation in Soviet?
She's a very good Girl Scout. And I think a model citizen from the Soviet perspective, and probably that's one of the reasons that she was permitted to be filmed and featured in such an interesting
and over such a long period of time. You see, I mean, she was filmed over a period of 6 months, and they weren't at all unhappy about it. I think they'd be much more unhappy about her being filmed now, funnily enough, than they were then.
She did make one interesting comment, which was somewhat irreverent, about teachers stuffing information down the throats of their pupils. And I think that there's an interesting possibility of ferment there among people of her generation, where you may begin to have some testing of the limits. I think what Paul says is absolutely correct, though, that people tend to be very cautious about going toward change for fear that this can close down again.
I don't think she's a particularly typical woman, though. I mean, I think there are other women in the series who will explain or touch on women's problems more than Rita does, because she's a very positive figure.
But she does raise some ones which are very widespread. Her relationship with her boyfriend.
Yes.
The attitude to sex. The problem she has with her parents over that. Her whole approach to life as a young woman with very little privacy is something which is a major daily preoccupation of Russians.
Yeah.
Still, now, that hasn't changed in 3 years.
Very little physically has changed. You could look at that film, and I would be extremely hard-pressed to see the difference between then and now in any aspect of the life depicted.
All right. Well, on that note, we will leave the education of Rita. We thank you all three for being with us, David Shipler, Paul Quinn Judge, and of course, Richard Denton. Thank you all three. Thank you for us at Frontline. I'm Judy Woodruff. Good night.
Frontline is produced for the documentary consortium by WGBH Boston, which is solely responsible for its content. Major funding for this special Frontline series was provided by this station and other public television stations nationwide. Additional funding was provided by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. For a transcript of this program, please write to Frontline, Box 322, Boston, Massachusetts, 02134. For videocassette information about this program, write to Films Incorporated, 1213 Wilmette Avenue, Wilmette, Illinois, 60091.
In the desolate countryside of Siberia, Mikhail Kusakov and his son Yuri carry on an ancient tradition, hunting for furs. A family that braves extraordinary circumstances to carry on the life the men love. Watch Hunter and Son next time on Comrades, a special Frontline series.